When love collides with tragedy, survival becomes a test of faith. This is the heartbreaking yet powerful story of Linda and Kwang's mother, two women bound by love for the same man, struggling to endure in his absence. Together they face unbearable loss, the silence of Kwang's departure, the shattering pain of miscarriage, and the shadow of life-threatening postpartum illness. Will Linda's fragile body and broken spirit withstand the storm, or will despair claim her? Stay with us to witness their journey of resilience and hope. Don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter of this emotional story. The absence of Kwang left a silence that weighed heavily on the house. Once filled with his laughter, footsteps, and warm presence, the rooms now echoed with nothing but memories. His mother and Linda often found themselves sitting side by side during the long evenings, not saying much at first, because words seemed too fragile to capture the emptiness they both felt. Yet, in that silence, there was an unspoken bond, an invisible thread connecting two women who shared the same love and the same loss, love for Kwang, and the loss of his companionship. On the nights when the rain tapped gently against the windows, Linda would rest her head against the armrest of the sofa, staring into the distance as if she could somehow see Kwang's figure returning home. His mother would notice the longing in Linda's eyes, and gently place her hand over hers, squeezing just enough to remind her that she was not alone. "We have to stay strong," she would whisper, her voice soft yet firm, as if she were trying to convince herself as much as she was convincing Linda. These small gestures, an embrace, a comforting glance, or a hand held tightly, became the fragile lanterns that lit their path through the darkness of Kwang's absence. But strength is not born overnight. Each morning, they woke with the weight of reality pressing against their hearts. His mother would prepare breakfast, even though neither of them had much appetite. She would force herself to cook Kwang's favorite dishes, believing that the smell of the food might bring back a trace of comfort, a reminder that life still had rhythm, even without him. Linda, in turn, tried her best to keep herself busy watering the garden, folding laundry, or reading a book, but her mind always drifted back to him. Every little detail reminded her of Kwang, the jacket hanging by the door, the empty chair at the dining table, the faint cologne still lingering on a pillow. It was in the evenings, however, when the emptiness felt most suffocating. The two women would sit together, sometimes speaking, sometimes simply sharing the silence. They found solace in telling stories about Kwang, his childhood mischief, his determination to pursue his dreams, the way he always carried warmth wherever he went. His mother's eyes often glistened with tears as she recalled his first day at school or the pride in her heart when he became a man she could admire. Linda, meanwhile, shared tender memories of her life with him, quiet walks at sunset, late-night conversations filled with laughter, the simple but profound comfort of falling asleep beside him. These shared memories did not erase the ache of his absence, but they wove a fabric of hope, binding the two women together as they navigated their grief. And slowly, little by little, the house began to breathe again. Not with joy, not yet, but with resilience. They discovered that although Kwang was gone, his presence remained deeply imprinted in every corner of their lives. They clung to the belief that he, too, would want them to endure, to keep moving forward even in his absence. His mother encouraged Linda to take short walks outside, to breathe fresh air and feel the sun on her skin. Linda, in return, reminded his mother to rest, to eat, to allow herself moments of laughter without guilt. They became each other's guardians, two fragile hearts protecting one another from breaking completely. In those shared evenings, a quiet promise was made: they would not let despair consume them. Even though their hearts were heavy with longing, they chose to hold on to the fragile light of hope. In the stillness of the night, while the stars shone faintly above, both women prayed silently for Kwang's safe return. And though the house remained quiet, their bond grew stronger, turning sorrow into a kind of strength that neither of them had ever known they possessed. Yet, as the days unfolded, a deeper sorrow emerged, one that neither of them could ignore, no matter how much they tried to cloak it with small acts of resilience. Linda had recently endured the unimaginable. She had lost the child she carried, a fragile life that had barely begun. The grief was unlike any other, striking not only her body but the very core of her soul. She had envisioned a future where the baby's cries filled the home, where Kwang's mother would cradle her grandchild with pride, and where Kwang himself would beam with joy as a father. All of that shattered in silence, leaving behind an emptiness that seemed infinite. The pain of miscarriage was not just physical. Linda's body was weak, drained of strength, but it was the invisible wounds, those carved deep into her spirit, that hurt the most. She wandered through the house with heavy steps, her eyes glassy and distant, as though she was trapped between the world of the living and the memories of what could have been. Nights became the hardest to endure. Alone in her room, she pressed her hands against her stomach, aching with the absence of the tiny heartbeat that once lived within her. Tears would stream down silently, soaking the pillow, until sleep finally claimed her in exhaustion. Kwang's mother watched her with a heart that broke again and again. She understood the depth of Linda's grief, but she also knew the dangers of allowing sorrow to fester unchecked. "You must take care of yourself, child," she often whispered while bringing bowls of hot soup or herbal tea into the room. "Your body needs time to heal. And your spirit too." But Linda, consumed by guilt and despair, could barely force herself to eat. She felt as though her body had failed her, failed the child, and even failed Kwang. The guilt weighed on her shoulders like an unshakable burden, pulling her deeper into despair. There were moments when she tried to pretend she was fine, watering the plants in the garden, folding Kwang's shirts, or sweeping the floor, as though these small rituals could mask the storm raging inside her. But inevitably, the facade crumbled. A faint cry of a neighbor's child, the sight of a baby stroller passing by outside, or even the lullaby on the radio would unravel her completely. She would sink into a chair, bury her face in her hands, and sob until her body trembled. In those moments, Kwang's mother would rush to her side, wrapping her arms tightly around her. She never scolded Linda for her weakness. Instead, she allowed her to cry, to release the unbearable weight, while softly murmuring words of comfort that seemed to echo a mother's timeless wisdom. Grief is heavy, but it does not mean you must carry it alone. Still, Linda's refusal to rest and observe the care her body desperately required began to take its toll. She neglected the rituals of recovery, ignored the need for nourishment, for warmth, for gentle healing. Every day she forced herself to do more than she should, and every night she paid the price with feverish sweats and a body that trembled with fatigue. Her spirit, already fragile, began to collapse under the dual assault of physical weakness and relentless sorrow. Yet through all of this, Kwang's mother never left her side. She adjusted her own sleep so she could keep watch at night, listening for Linda's restless turns or muffled cries. She prepared remedies, coaxed her to eat even a few bites, and prayed silently whenever Linda's strength seemed to fail her. Sometimes, she would sit by the window in the quiet hours before dawn, hands clasped tightly together, whispering prayers not only for her son far away but for the young woman beside her who had already endured more than her share of pain. Together, they were caught in the cruel rhythm of grief, two women bound by love and loss, each struggling in their own way. Yet, in every moment of weakness, they still had each other. And though Linda's body and spirit faltered, the presence of Kwang's mother was a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of despair, reminding her, however faintly, that she was not alone in this darkness. But the storm of sorrow was not yet finished with Linda. The longer her grief and weakness lingered, the more perilous her condition became. Her body, already fragile from the miscarriage, began to falter under the weight of exhaustion and despair. What started as quiet spells of dizziness soon escalated into trembling fevers, nights of restless sleep, and moments when her breath came shallow and faint, as if life itself was slipping away from her little by little. She was drifting into the dangerous shadows of postpartum complications, where each day became a fragile thread that might unravel at any moment. The once radiant woman, full of gentle smiles and soft laughter, now appeared like a ghost of herself. Her skin grew pale, her eyes dim, her steps unsteady. Kwang's mother could hardly bear to look at her without tears welling up. She tended to Linda tirelessly, placing cool cloths on her forehead, preparing broths and teas, urging her to eat, urging her to rest. But Linda's spirit, crushed by sorrow, resisted recovery. She seemed caught in a silent battle within herself, unable to decide whether she wished to keep fighting or simply surrender to the numbness that beckoned her. At night, the house grew heavy with fear. Sometimes, Linda would wake with a start, gasping for air, her body drenched in cold sweat. Other times, she would stare blankly at the ceiling, her lips trembling as if words longed to escape but never did. On those nights, Kwang's mother would sit by her side, holding her hand tightly as though her grip alone could anchor Linda to life. "Stay with us, child," she would whisper, her voice breaking with desperation. "You must stay. Kwang will need you. I need you." But as the hours passed and Linda's strength waned further, a terrifying question began to gnaw at the edges of their hearts: would she survive? The uncertainty cast a dark veil over the house. Each morning, when the first light spilled through the windows, Kwang's mother breathed a sigh of relief that Linda was still alive. Yet, each evening, dread returned. Would this be the night her body gave in? Would sorrow claim her entirely? The woman who had once been a beacon of warmth now seemed like a candle flame flickering against an unrelenting wind, each flicker threatening to vanish into the darkness. And yet, even in the midst of this despair, there were small signs that hope refused to die. Sometimes, in moments of clarity, Linda would glance at Kwang's mother with tears in her eyes and whisper, "I'm trying." They were simple words, fragile as they sounded, but to his mother they were a lifeline. She clung to them, praying they meant that somewhere within Linda still burned a will to live. With every bowl of soup she coaxed her to sip, with every prayer whispered into the night sky, Kwang's mother fought beside her, not with medicine alone, but with love, faith, and an unyielding determination. Still, the fear remained constant, like a shadow that refused to lift. The truth was harsh and undeniable. Linda was standing on the edge between life and death, her body weakened, her spirit fractured. Kwang's absence was a wound neither of them could heal, and without him, it felt as though the balance could tip in either direction at any moment. Would Linda gather the strength to overcome her suffering, to rise from the ashes of despair, and wait for the day Kwang returned? Or would her light extinguish, leaving behind only sorrow and unanswered prayers? As the night stretched on and the winds whispered outside their quiet home, Kwang's mother could do nothing more than hold Linda's hand, pray with all her heart, and hope for a miracle. For in that fragile moment, life itself hung in the balance, and only time would reveal whether love and resilience were strong enough to keep Linda tethered to this world.